We're going to have to sound check because there's a sound file in the presentation.
No, it will just automatically.
Well, we'll see what automatically. I've been through this a few times. Not always automatic.
So you have to connect it and before live stream. Everything is done just sound.
Here we go. Good. Yay. Is this it? We should get started? Or wait a while, or what's up?
I'm just waiting for Ramkishore Das and Surichi.
Huh?
I'm waiting for Ramkishore Das ji.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. We'll wait for Ram to show.
No, any more student?
Any more students? That was the question.
Um,
Who knows?
yeah. They might come in between. I don't know. Okay. Then we can start though.
Okay. We'll wait for Ram to show.
Okay.
There he is. The man we've been waiting for. That's you.
Yeah. Or that you.
Is there a president of the club? Who's the president of the club?
President has a class right now, but I mean, I can.
He has a class right
Yeah.
now. Okay. You're the substitute president.
He's the former president.
So I think we can get started. So I mean, Maharaji is visiting university for I think 3 years now, so most of us knows him. But for those who are here for the first time, let me give his brief introduction. Um,
He's going to read something. I know.
so,
This is where he was born, and this is where he went to school, and this is he met Prabhupada, and here he is today, and how you go?
I think that's exactly it. But let me just add a couple of things about a couple of interesting things that I found, or rather, for me they were interesting. So actually, he has been practicing yoga since 50 years, and just recently, Ramkishan Das told that he will be turning 77 soon. So it's very good to have him like the experienced guide to have a lecture, something like this today. And he has been guest speaker at Fortune 500 companies, and importantly for us, he has led several clubs in the university. For example, Bhakti Yoga clubs and Krishna Lunch at universities such as MIT, University of Illinois, and many others. And of course, he is appreciated worldwide for his scholarship and his ability to nurture and develop spiritual communities with love and devotion. So with
He's a
that,
good guy.
I'll hand over the microphone or the talk to him.
Okay,
Yeah, welcome.
okay. Well, I guess you all know each other. Yes? Okay. So anybody not familiar with Bhagavad Gita needs an introduction to Bhagavad Gita. Anybody needs an introduction? You, okay. Just have to get the lay of the land. A little background. Some few years ago, 5, 6 years ago, I was in Beijing. I traveled. And in Beijing, I was invited to speak at a yoga studio. And I don't remember what the topic was, but I do remember how the discussion started. At the end of the talk, immediately one girl raised her hand, and it wasn't on topic at all. She just had a question. What's your take on the ship of Theseus? And I know what the ship of Theseus story is, but so I was curious. How do you know what the ship of Theseus is? How do you know? And she said, we studied in philosophy class. I don't think I said so, but I was thinking, what's a philosophy class in Beijing studying Greek philosophy? I was puzzled. And in particular, because the topic, ship of Theseus, is about acknowledging there's the presence of a soul. So we had a little discussion on the ship of Theseus. The ship of Theseus is a story that was told by Plutarch a few years ago to help people, his audience, understand during his time what was kind of revolutionary. Like a little bit before him, Socrates was condemned to death for teaching, holding a teaching that there's a soul beyond the body. So that's what the ship of Theseus is. It's a story told by Plutarch to help his audience understand you're not the body. So, the persistence of identity. This is the presentation has sound, and it's a little TED talk, but it's kind of different TED talk. It's an animated TED talk. I think you'll like it. I like it.
Throughout the history of mankind, 3 little words have sent poets to the blank page, philosophers to the agora, and seekers to the oracles. Who am I? From the ancient Greek aphorism inscribed on the Temple of Apollo, know thyself, to the Who's Rock anthem, Who Are You? Philosophers, psychologists, academics, scientists, artists, theologians, and politicians have all tackled the subject of identity. Their hypotheses are widely varied and lack significant consensus. These are smart, creative people. So what's so hard about coming up with the right answer? One challenge certainly lies with the complex concept of the persistence of identity. Which you is who? The person you are today, 5 years ago, who you'll be in 50 years, and when is am? This week, today, this hour, this second? And which aspect of you is I? Are you your physical body, your thoughts and feelings, your actions? These murky waters of abstract logic are tricky to navigate, and so it's probably fitting that to demonstrate the complexity, the Greek historian Plutarch used the story of a ship. How are you I? As the tale goes, Theseus, the mythical founder king of Athens, single-handedly slayed the evil Minotaur at Crete, then returned home on a ship. To honor this heroic feat, for 1,000 years, Athenians painstakingly maintained his ship in the harbor. and annually reenacted his voyage. Whenever a part of the ship was worn or damaged, it was replaced with an identical piece of the same material until at some point no original parts remained. Plutarch noted the ship of Theseus was an example of the philosophical paradox revolving around the persistence of identity. How can every single part of something be replaced, yet it still remains the same thing? Let's imagine there are two ships. The ship that Theseus docked in Athens, ship A, and the ship sailed by the Athenians 1,000 years later, ship B. Very simply, our question is this: does A equal B? Some would say that for 1,000 years there has been only one ship of Theseus, and because the changes made to it happened gradually, it never at any point in time stopped being the legendary ship. Though they have absolutely no parts in common, the two ships are numerically identical, meaning one and the same. So A equals B. However, others could argue that Theseus never set foot on ship B, and his presence on the ship is an essential qualitative property of the ship of Theseus. It cannot survive without him. So, though the two ships are numerically identical, they are not qualitatively identical. Thus, A does not equal B. But what happens when we consider this twist? What if, as each piece of the original ship was cast off, somebody collected them all and rebuilt the entire original ship? When it was finished, undeniably, two physical ships would exist, the one that's docked in Athens and the one in some guy's backyard. Each could lay claim to the title, the Ship of Theseus, but only one could actually be the real thing. So which one is it? And more importantly, what does this have to do with you? Like the ship of Theseus, you are a collection of constantly changing parts. Your physical body, mind, emotions, circumstances, and even your quirks, always changing, but still, in an amazing and sometimes illogical way, you stay the same too. This is one of the reasons that the question, who am I, is so complex. And in order to answer it, like so many great minds before you must be willing to dive into the bottomless ocean of philosophical paradox. Or maybe you could just answer, I am a legendary hero saving a powerful ship on an epic journey. That could work too.
This little video clip, it's one of my favorite presentations because it's really, really, really simple and it makes the point very clearly. Now, some years before Plutarch was, who's the fellow? Socrates, right? The hemlock, drinking the hemlock. So, some years before, he was put on trial for heresy. A Greek philosopher was found guilty of heresy, and the punishment was death. And the death method was he was to drink what you see in the painting here, some hemlock. Hemlock is a very strong poison, and you would very quickly die. So he was given the option that he could drink it, and he agreed to drink it. And then one other thing is the person, the Crito, he asked, how shall we bury you? He had the choice of his funeral. And his reply was, however you please, if you can catch me, and I do not get away from you. And he drank the hemlock. Meaning, he had strong convictions. The soul is eternal. The soul can, najayate, navriyate, kadachin. The soul is never born, the soul is never dies, the soul is eternal. He had that understanding. Of course, prior to Greek philosophy and Greek philosophers, there was Bhagavad Gita, and of course, eternal knowledge is eternal. Even before Krishna spoke Bhagavad Gita, long before that, he spoke Bhagavad Gita, because the knowledge is eternal knowledge. And eternal knowledge tells us, this is just a diagram to illustrate, in the center there's the soul, and there's coverings of the soul. The gross covering is the body, and then there's the covering, the mind energy, or the mind, mental energy, intellectual, bodily, and spiritual. And the driving force or animating force within, that's the soul. And that's who we are. It's who we are with the covering, two gross and subtle coverings. And that's that second chapter Bhagavad Gita, fundamental. And how to appreciate or come to that different conception of life, and the bodily conception of life is the process of yoga. And one of the features of the process of yoga is to aspire for or strive to attain the quality of goodness. And one of the aspects or indications of goodness is introspection. Here we have a nice verse from Bhagavad Gita, chapter 3. Indriyani paranyahor. The working senses are superior to dull matter. It's a hierarchy. Mind is higher than the senses. Intelligence is still higher than the mind, and he, the soul, is even higher than the intelligence. So, bottom, the body, and body is made of senses. The mind perceives those senses, intellect, and analyzes what's going on out there in the field of mere material nature. And then there's the conscious self, the soul, within. And that's who we are. So self-discovery, journey of self-discovery is to understand who we really are. This is an example that Prabhupada would sometimes give, an example of a lady very much attached to her bird cage. She's very much attached to the bird cage to the extent that she neglects the bird inside. And what happens, the bird croaks. So the bird is different than the cage. The covering is different than the animating force within. And Prabhupada would call this the cage polishing civilization, indicating, not too much flattery goes to simply having nice external and not internal awareness of self, because the human form of life is meant for that. Some years ago, someone recommended that I read this book. The painting illustrates what's in the book. The doctor was a cardiologist, and one of the things that cardiologists do from time to time is they perform open heart surgery to save a patient. It's risky. So one of the things they do to find out if the patient is doing all right or not, they have this little system, this EKG, that tells is their nervous system shut down or is it still happening? The waves may diminish, or they may go way up, or they may go flat. If it goes flat, their nervous system shut down. And then another is they measure the heartbeat while they're doing heart surgery. And if the heart stops beating and the nervous system shuts down, that's a sign that the patient has died on the operating table. They have a procedure, and sometimes it works, and sometimes it doesn't work. They have these electrodes they place on the chest of the person, the patient, that is shown they left, and they artificially give a signal to the heart that the heart is beating, because the signal prompts the heart to beat artificially by electrodes. And then sometimes the patient survives. And sometimes the patient doesn't survive because they died on the operating table. So in one case, the patient survived, and Dr. Sabam went to meet with his patient, as good medical practice. You go see the patient, how you doing, how do you feel, etc. And the patient started to describe to him what happened during cardiac arrest. And, in detail, he with visual acuity, with auditory acuity, and memory, he described to Dr. Sabam everything that this administrator said, the nurse said, the doctor said, the words, the actions, and then he felt the thing in his body, and he survived. So Dr. Sabam asked him, "How do you know all this?" And he said, "I was watching from up above the operating table." It's called out-of-body experience. You've heard these before? OBE? Yes? No? Not sure. Yes, you have. Well, out-of-body experience. So that's an artist's way of depicting what an out-of-body experience is. So I'll just repeat. In an out-of-body experience, the demonstration is consciousness is not the electrical chemical events in the brain, because the electrical chemical events shut down. And there's no blood going to the brain because the heart stopped. So two indicators. That's not what consciousness is. When somebody's having an out-of-body experience, consciousness is something separate and distinct from the body and the activities of the body. Now, normally we identify with the body. What's going on. But in out-of-body experiences, there's something else. So what Dr. Sabam did is he went around and asked some other doctors, "Have you gotten any reports like this?" Because there are other cardiologists in the hospital. And they said yes. And they described some, what their experience was with that patient that's had an out-of-body experience. And then he, researched, because he's a doctor, so he just comprehensively documented the interviews, etc., and came to a conclusion at the end of the book is, I'm reluctant to say this, but I can't reach any other conclusion than the seat of consciousness is not the body. So I found that interesting. Interesting. So I then read another book, recommended book, on the other side of the country, the University of Washington, Dr. Kimberly Clark Sharp. She had a similar but different report. In her report, in her book, she describes the patient didn't just observe from up above the operating table. They went up to the ceiling, floated across the ceiling, went out an open window, and up 3 flights of stairs, or 3 floors, and found themselves looking inside a janitor's closet from the outside of the building. And Dr. Sharp was what? So she went to the janitor 3 floors up and asked the janitor, "Can I take a look inside your closet?" The janitor said, "Ma'am, this is a hospital. I keep the closet locked. No one can get in. But because you're a doctor, I'll let you in." And what the patient saw inside the closet was exactly what was inside the closet. And in addition, the patient described to us just outside the janitor's closet, there was a little ledge. And on the ledge was a sneaker that had a rip in the toe, one sneaker. So she couldn't see, because you can only see it from the outside. So she went up some flights above and looked down, and sure enough, there was the sneaker on the ledge outside the janitor's closet. And she did the same thing. You know what? And asked others, and she ended up writing a book about that experience. And there's plenty of others, but those are 2 samples that indicate the same thing. The seat of consciousness is other than the body. And what's that seat of consciousness? Well, here's a fellow. I've never met him, but this is a little video on TikTok, and he's being interviewed by the fellow on the right up on the top, and he's dressed a little different than me, but he's saying the same things I'm saying. So here we go.
Reality is important is because it is reality. We are not human beings having a spiritual experience. We are spiritual beings having a human experience. Who I am and what I am is not my body. It's not even my personality. It's not the trauma I suffered. It's not what I've been through. That there is a little spark of the divine inside of me. There's hard data that shows around mental health and well-being that having serenity, meaning, purpose, a losing of oneself to a transcendent self of the divine increases greatly the quality of our lives. We're a part of something much greater and much more beautiful than ourselves, and in living in that state can greatly enrich your life.
It's a good video clip. So, spelled wrong. I mean changed his Schrodinger's name is spelled incorrectly here, but he's the father of quantum mechanics. And here's his view. He did do some research like this. Consciousness cannot be accounted for in physical terms, for consciousness is absolutely fundamental. Now he's a thinker, he's a philosopher, but mathematician, philosopher, so he has some empirical side to him, and this is his point of view. A few other points. It's not a long presentation. Something I like to do, and I still do, is I like to hear recordings of my spiritual master speaking. And in those recordings, I started hearing this phrase from time to time. The soul is both conscious and consciousness. And I thought, that sounds cool. What does it mean? The soul is both conscious and consciousness. So I just stayed with it, and being patient helps. And I read something in the Upanishads that says, in Upanishadic language, because Upanishadic language is sometimes not so easy to understand, cryptic. Just as, so the saying goes like this: just as a lamp, that's why the image here, is both luminous and it lights up the pots and plates in the room, so also consciousness is the living entity is both conscious and possesses consciousness. So there's a lamp, and you light a lamp, and objects in the room can be seen, the pots and plates in the room, or stuff, objects, perceivable object can be perceived when there's light, and light comes from the lamp. So similarly, as light comes from a lamp, consciousness is within, and it spreads out, and therefore we can perceive things because of the presence of consciousness. Simple, but that's a function. So here we are. There's consciousness spreading throughout the body, and there's this little guy, that same spirit soul. I learned something by reading from University of Calgary. They have a way of, this is science, they have a way of measuring light. Maybe somebody here knows how to do that stuff. By photons. So there's the light that's in the projector, that's one kind of light. The light that's in the fluorescent bulbs in the ceiling, that's another kind of light. And there are different intensities of light. Sometimes it's not just an on and off switch, it's a dimmer switch. There's more photons for higher brightness of light, and less photons for more dim, but some photons because there's light. And then the switch goes off and there's no photons. Similarly, within human bodies or living entities' bodies, there's photon emission, there's light. And darker consciousness is less. Higher consciousness is more. Just by, and it can be measured by photons. That's something that they've done. Ultra weak photon emission, UPE. Light emanates from living beings, but that light departs when the soul is gone. So, like the eyes is one of the ways of telling if somebody's dead. You just look at their eyes. There's nothing there. There's something there when there's presence of the soul. I like graphics. Here's one. This is again the consciousness example. Here's an eggshell, and there's a crack in the eggshell, and some light is coming because there's light inside the eggshell. And the process of yoga or consciousness elevation, expanding consciousness, is to open the shell, and more light goes out into the distance. And then there's self-realization or nirvana, where the soul or the conscious entity is completely separate from the covering. And it isn't impeded by shells or coverings. That's the nirvana stage of consciousness. It's a Sanskrit term, but there's ways to understand it. Possibly one who's having an out-of-body experience is experiencing this, what this illustration is showing. Here's sometimes the question is, there's a phrase, a modern phrase, New Age kind of phrase, that says, soul-to-soul experience. Their soulmate. Heard that phrase, maybe. So, is there such a thing? It's a reasonable question. And within the Bhagavatam, the answer is yes. Here's how. If one soul and the other soul relate through the medium of the super soul. So now we're going to like a 201 class about super soul. Here's a Chinese fellow, and he's a nice man, very gentle, and he's got a little beard, and he's smoking something, who knows what it is. And he has a friend, and the friend is also Chinese, and he has a little bit bigger beard, and he doesn't have a pipe in his hand, but they have some other things in common besides they're Chinese and they have little beards. And one of those things in common is they have a soul within. And the souls are different, so there's different colors. But another sameness is there's a super soul inside the first fellow, and there's the same super soul that's within the heart of his friend. And not only his friend, but within every living entity. Anything that has a soul present, wherever there's life, means there's a soul present, and whether it's a microbe or an elephant or something, so small or big, it's the same soul, same size, and the same super soul. Different souls, same super soul. So when there's a soul to super soul relationship, then one can have a soul to soul relationship. A couple more points, and we'll just see if there's discussion. What differentiates a man from a machine? Consciousness. Is it possible to make artificial intelligence is all about making machines that appear to do things that a human can do, but there isn't consciousness. So long, long ago, long before they had robots and things like that, somebody introduced me to this light machine idea. So I made one. Well, I didn't do it. Someone that knows how to do it did it. In a plexiglass covering that had like a wooden container, so I could carry it and put it in front of high school kids, speaking this message. And it has three things besides the plexiglass. There's a light sensitive chip at the top there's a little button, you press the button, and it shines a light on the light-sensitive wafer or chip, and then there's a machine that prints out. When the signal goes from the light-sensitive wafer or chip to the printer, it prints. I see a red light. So, we had kids come up and press the button, and then it works. However, when you ask the question, where's the experience of seeing the red light besides the behavior reporting that it sees, there isn't experience in the machine. Machine can record it. It produces a behavior printing. You make more sophisticated the behavior of saying or recording, or somebody, your GPS man or lady saying, so many miles and turn right at such and such street, and to get you to where your destination. It's the same. It's a machine doing what it replaces a human. But there's no consciousness. That's the distinction. And consciousness is at the soul platform. Consciousness extends from the soul out. It can go through the mind and intelligence and senses and so forth. But the seat of consciousness is the soul. And without the soul, there's just a machine. Is there a distinction between the machine and the soul? Of course. One scientist, you appreciate scientists, he was studying what's the constituent parts of a human body. So this is what they came up with. Enough iron to make 6 small nails, enough carbon to make 900 pencils, sugar to sweeten 10 cups of coffee, of course that's very relative, potassium to fire a toy cannon, and a whole bunch of other things. Enough lime and fat to make 7 bars of soap, phosphorus to make 20 matchboxes, water to fill a 10-gallon tank, and a bunch of other little stuff, sulfur, calcium, and other things. So, supposing you went to a place that sold these chemicals or elements, you need $20 to pay for the elements that make up a body. So then, which is more important, the 20 elements worth of body or the soul within? Or here's a BMW that got smashed and totaled, and somebody died. So one of your friends was in that car, and which is more valuable, the $50,000 BMW or your $20 friend? Last, this is that person who is with his back to us, that's us. And then we're looking at, on the left is birth, on the right is death, and in between is life. And then the question is, what goes in the middle? Who am I? The same question from the very beginning. Am I truly happy? What's my real goal of life? What's human life meant for? And what happens later? What happens after this life? So these are nice questions. And starting with one at the top, who am I question? That's where the little TED Talk was. And it's not only TED Talk has us asking that question, or this actor was asking the question. It's a question in Bhagavad Gita. What's my duty? Krishna, please instruct me. So it starts with, you're not the body. And many times as we hear we're not the body, we still identify with the body. And self-realization is to go beyond that. That to act, not just philosophically or cognitively accept in principle, there's persistence of identity because there's a soul within and all those nice things. But operate and function on that platform. That's the purpose of yoga, that's the purpose of self-realization. Here's a final little image. On the right side, there's a painting of Lord Chaitanya. There's sannyasi on the right side, and before him is Sanatana Goswami. Now, at one point in time, Sanatana Goswami, born in a Saraswat Brahmin family of high parentage and high learning and so forth and so on, he somehow got tricked or ambushed or threatened by Nawab Hussein Shah, the Muslim leader, to be in his ruling party. So, because otherwise he was going to torture all the sadhus and Vaishnavas in his countryside that he was ruling. It was not a nice man. So he agreed. But he left. So in order to take shelter of spiritual practice. And when he met Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, here's his questions in Bengali. Ke ami, who am I? Same question. And Keni amai, Jara Tapa Try. Tapa Try, the threefold miseries. Why do the threefold miseries always give me trouble? Two questions. And then, an extended answer to those two questions, because the who am I question it's simple, but it has its complexity. Now, you see there's a little sound thing here. That means Prabhupada is being recorded speaking to an interviewer of New York Post. And here's the recording. I hope it works.
What is the perfection of this life? The perfection of this life is to understand oneself. But this is the beginning. Why I'm suffering? If there is any solution of the suffering, there are so many things. This question should be there. Unless a man is answering to this question, so what I am, where I'm suffering, where from I am come, and where I have to go, then he is considered on the animal level. Because animals, they have no such question. It is in the human form of life, these questions are there. And their answers are there in the scripture. So if we simplicity and follow the answers from authoritative sources, then the solution of life is there. Michael, so know yourself. Yes. Know yourself. Yes.
Consistent. Last slide is a nice image of Lord Chaitanya and Mahamantra. And I assume all of you have at least been introduced to chanting. I saw somebody with a bead bag that probably does some regular chanting. And join the club. I've been chanting for a good number of years. And how can you do something for 57 years and there's nothing to it? It's hollow. It's empty. You can't. So what's in the Mahamantra here is the same as what's in Bhagavad Gita. That's knowledge of who we are. The firstborn living being, I'll just end with this. The firstborn living being is Lord Brahma, according to the Vedic text. And before Lord Brahma did anything, he was inquisitive. And he wanted to know where he came from and who am I. And so there's a nice history of what he did. But he couldn't find, by sense inspection, he couldn't find out who he was or where he came from. So he went back up at the top of the lotus flower and he heard these syllables, tapa, tapa, 3 times, tapasya. So he understood because he's very, very intelligent. And he started doing austerities, tapa. And then he heard another sound. And that other sound was a mantra. that the spiritual potency of the Supreme Lord imparted to him through sound. So he started chanting that mantra that became his tapa. Anyway, and by that purification, the entire Vedic knowledge was revealed to him from within his heart. So, same, at least in principle, the Maha Mantra helps us purify so that when we read Bhagavad Gita or hear spiritual teaching, we can understand what it is instead of, I don't know what it is. It's that the effect of the purification that comes from mantra chanting is to acquaint ourselves with transcendental knowledge. Is anybody, at the beginning I asked anybody not familiar with Bhagavad Gita and nobody raised your hand. Does anybody here not yet have a copy of Bhagavad Gita? Because there's a few copies on the table. We're very happy to give you a gift copy if you don't have one. Yes, you all have. Okay, any discussion on this topic? We've discussion is ended. We're ready to go forward. Okay. Yes.
Once we have this knowledge, at this presentation we talked about like who am I, where I came from, and where do I go after this life. Now that we have all this knowledge,
Then what?
and then we start practicing,
Yeah.
but and if some obstacles present in the way,
Sure.
and
Welcome to life. Then?
And then enthusiasm in the beginning, whatever it's on the skyrocketing, and after some time it comes down. Again it goes maybe a little, not as much as in the beginning. So
The
might
side
go,
curve.
and sometimes it might go even to the bottom, beyond.
Why and what to do?
Yes. I really need help with that, how to stay enthusiastic even when the obstacles present.
Somebody raised this question just today, and I sent them a text, just 2 paragraphs from Nectar of Devotion, Chapter 10, Techniques. And the technique was tolerance. So the reference that Prabhupada makes is to a verse 10:14:14. No, 10:14:8. Bhagavatam. I'll send to you the little short statement from Nectar Devotion, Chapter 10. But the essence is it's Lord Brahma, Chapter 14 of Canto 10 is Lord Brahma's prayers to Krishna. Tate nukampam susamikshamano. That's how it starts. For those who are embodied, that's all of us. At least there may be some ghost or something floating around. Most of us have bodies. And by identifying with the body, there's some hardship. Less and more, but there's something. And then sometimes there's the hardship becomes intense. And the verse is saying when a good person encounters hardship, it's a sign that the personality of Godhead is attending to them, because we have affinity for the temporary. Yes, we went up, but we have affinity for the temporary. That's the down. Sometimes. Anyway, it's common. I'll just say. One young girl who's in University of Florida in Gainesville, she's getting adjusted to being at this mega thing. A young Indian girl that grew up in a devotee family, and you know, she's bewildered by the whole situation, and you know, her chanting is taking a hit. Like she can't pick up her beat bag now. So this is what she's writing in the letter. You know, what he's saying, why and what to do. So it's a privilege to be put through some difficulty. This is what Prabhupada is writing. Is this is Brahma's state. Somewhere back there, who knows what that something is back there, but some misdeeds have happened. No, bhakti is sufficiently powerful to overcome the fruits of karma. So it's not. Therefore it's not the fruits of karma, but it's the residual tendency to again engage oneself in karma that Krishna is taking away through the fire of ordeal. And the devotee welcomes the purification that's going to take me permanently. Not like I like going through difficulty, I like going through suffering. But when suffering comes, I understand where it's coming from. It's a compassionate effort that Krishna is extending to me because by principle, bhakti has the power to dissolve karma. But I'm not experiencing, you practicing bhakti, not experiencing karma, but there's something else back there, the tendency. And if I slacken, the tendency gets stronger. And, as you said, you hit bottom or close to like free fall. So it's an opportunity. What's going on is it's an opportunity given by Krishna to help us who are devotees, trying to become devotees, undergo some hardship and difficulty. It's purification of the tendency. Because there's two things. There's the reaction to past misdeeds, that's dissolved. There's a tendency to do those same misdeeds again, that's not resolved or dissolved. Try it. Stop chanting and hang out with the same people you used to hang out with. What happens? Same old, same old. Easy. Like falling off a log. Easy. So that tendency is further purification that comes from bhakti, and that's a personal reciprocation from Krishna to help us overcome tendencies, residual, what's the Sanskrit term? There's a Sanskrit term. Vasana. Tendency. Then tendency that's not wholesome. So it's a gesture from Krishna to help us overcome those tendencies. And so when there's an initial encouragement because the reaction reactions go away quickly, and then tendency starts to sneak in again. It's like a bungee cord. You know what a bungee cord is? The elastic thing that has two hooks, and as soon as you unhook the hooks, the bungee cord effect. So as long as I'm consciously, enthusiastically extending myself in bhakti, fantastic. And then tendency is business as usual. The business as usual is, it's a consequence of slackening, and it's also an indication from Krishna. It's not as painful as for those who have no bhakti. It's minor, it's minor in comparison. And so one accepts that's what the verse says. 10:14:8. Look it up later. And I'll send a little excerpt from Nectar Devotion. Anything else?
question about the Brahman. What exactly is that?
What exactly is what?
The Brahman. I've seen
Brahman.
it before.
What is it exactly?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, like how to describe it because I've read
Sure.
it before, but it's sometimes had a hard time understanding it.
There's the spiritual world and there's the material world. According to the Vedic texts, the universe has 7 layers. Each layer is 10 times thicker and 10 times thicker, so it's like hard shell, hard covering. But it's something on the other side. And it's something that's on the other side, like when Vamanik pokes his toe through the coverings of the universe, the causal ocean comes in. And the causal ocean covers his toe or foot, and then becomes the Ganges. And it descends, and etc., etc. So on the other side is the causal ocean. And there's something on the other shore of the causal ocean, and that's the spiritual sky. And what's that spiritual sky? The spiritual, there's 3 parts. In that vastness of the spiritual sky is sky, but it's not material sky, it's spiritual sky. And that spiritual sky is, that's your question, it's the effulgence, the light emanating from the spiritual planets that are in the spiritual sky. That illumination, Jyoti, Brahma Jyoti, that light is, the light is from the spiritual planets. And the lights of the spiritual planets are due to Bhagavan, who's within the spiritual planet, or Narayana, who's within the Vaikuntha planets, or Krishna, who's within Goloka planet, or, you know, Ramchandra, who's in Ayodhya, the topmost of the Vaikuntha realm in the spiritual sky, the planet, and it's effulgent. So the effulgence, that's the Brahman or Brahman Jyoti. The effulgence is emanating from the effulgent, the source of the effulgence. The effulgence is resting upon the source. And then there's a person. So there's these 3 features: Brahman, Paramatma, and Bhagavan. You've heard these terms? Oh, so I'll say, do it again. Brahman is the effulgence. Paramatma is the localized place where this effulgence is coming from. Vaikuntha planets. And in those Vaikuntha planets, Narayan resides. So that's a stage of realization. That Narayan expands himself in different ways, but ends up within the heart. So that's Paramatma. And so that's a stage of realization. The Brahman, Paramatma, is localized, all pervasive, localized, and then personal, Bhagavan. It's the same absolute truth that there's in the Srimad Bhagavatam, there's a verse that it says it explicitly. Vedanta tattva vidas tattvam yad jnanam advayam brahmeti paramatmeti bhagavaniti shabdite. All 3 are of the non-dual substance. Yet jnanam advayam, the non-dual reality. Brahman is an impersonal feature. Then there's the localized feature. And then there's the personal feature of that same non-dual reality. What's Brahman? That's your question. It's the light or the impersonal feature of what's beyond material creation, the vastness of the spiritual sky. That's what Brahman is. And we're part of it. Thus, Aham Brahmasmi. So there are those that like that phrase. They like being identifying themselves with Brahman, and they think that's it. That's it. I'm Brahman. I'm God. Brahman is the supreme, and I'm Brahman. Nice to meet you, sir. One God meeting another God. But so they make such persons don't make the distinction between the tiny Atma and the Param Atma. There's a distinction. And then Bhagavan, the personal feature, from whom the Paramatma is expansion. So there's levels of realization. Brahman is the introductory, beyond material realization of the spiritual realm and its vastness, impersonal. No, there's no form, no qualities. It's just all pervasive existence. Brahman. You had something.
I had a question, but
You think we're out of time? I don't think we're out of time.
yeah. So you discussed about soul and super soul.
Yeah.
So my question was like, are they the same or
No.
one is greater than other?
They're qualitatively the same, quantitatively not the same. Want some examples? Sure. From the Upanishads, Nityo Nityanam, Chaitanas Chaitananam, Eko Bahunam, Yovidadati Kaman. One that's maintaining the necessities of all of the many. There's the tiny, conscious entity, eternal and conscious entity. That's you and me. Entities, there's one supreme. That's the distinction. And that one supreme is maintaining the necessities, providing the necessities of all. The plural living entities. So there's distinction. Qualitatively, same. The spark and a big blazing fire, same quality. Particle, gold, and gold mine. Gold and gold. Qualitatively same. Quantitatively different. And function. The one maintains the many. There's other things to say, but that's, yes, a good starting point. Okay. Yes.
Right. I had a question. So nowadays, people are creating like more complex programs for the AGI, and they are getting increasingly convinced that that we can perform all actions that a human can do, and then we can also like think like humans. Yeah. And so they're trying to like mimic humans.
Yeah, computer can think.
Yeah. So
no problem.
You.
But without a computer programmer, the computer can't think. You have to have the combinations of ones and zeros so that the computer can think.
Like, how do we explain someone that this is just a program that still encompasses a lot of things, but it's not actually consciousness, even though it tries to
I
mimic
did
it.
I showed you. I did it to high school kids. And if you understand the principle, expand the principle. Where in this little plexiglass case, press a button, a light comes on. There's a light-sensitive chip at the top. It detects the light, and it sends its signal to the printer that says, if you get it to say it, not just print it out, I see a red light. So where's the consciousness in that machine? And then you take it simple and you make it more sophisticated and complicated. It doesn't change the principle. Drones don't fly. Robots don't move without an operator. And there's hardware, there's software, there's an operator. So you get hardware and software, put it together, make a you know, a robot. Great. Where's consciousness? We're working on it. It's a machine. Machines aren't conscious. Matter isn't conscious. Sophisticated combinations of matter are not consciousness. What's consciousness? It's the soul. Conscious and consciousness. It's pretty simple. That's this whole presentation. So it's like, yes, there are people that have this idea. It's called, there's Sanskrit words for it. They're asuras. Demons. And there's always a divine and demonic chapter, a whole chapter in Bhagavad Gita. They want to do away with God. There's no necessity. We can make a machine that's everything that a human does, including experiencing consciousness. You wait and see. We're working. Post-data check. Yeah, sophistication, fine, but not consciousness. Without the operator, you don't have the machine doing anything. One university, more than one university, in Texas, I saw for the first time the little boxes on wheels. And I asked, moving along. I think, what's that? It's a pizza delivery. The student calls up the pizza shop, and this guy puts hot pizza and some sodas and whatever else he puts in there, and then programs the little conveyor, the pizza delivery box. Little white thing, he's got eyes and lights, and when he stops, he makes a little boop 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 boop. Then moves forward, goes to It's his program. There's a behavior, but where's consciousness? Hot pizza, fantastic. There's somebody back there pushing the buttons and making the design. So, for this whole cosmic manifestation, it's just chance. Kaboom! The chunk exploded, the Big Bang, and matter went flying in all directions, and now we got life. Oh, come on. What's behind it? Where did the chunk come from? What exploded the chunk? Anything? You're a thoughtful man. You probably have something.
I'm in the process of learning, Maharaj.
Okay. We all are. Okay. That's it. Thank you very much. You can do your closing remarks.
Yeah, I don't have anything to say.
Okay.
Join me in thanking Maharaji for coming to campus.
Okay.
We hope you come again.
I'm as an eternal spirit soul, probably take birth after birth and continue to visit universities. Who knows how many births?
Thank you.
Okay. Do we have some Mahaprasada?